Queen Semiramis, the sun goddess, Nimrod, known as Baal or Bel, the sun god, and Tammuz, who was the son, the virgin-born son of the moon goddess and the sun god. Tammuz later became known as Jesus in the Christian stories. And when this Babylonian trinity was taken to Rome, as the bloodlines moved to Rome and founded the Christian church, they changed the names, but basically the same religion remained. This is a depiction of the moon goddess and the sun god, the star, the sun there, which is an original depiction from Ur in what is now Iraq, Sumer, Babylon, from 2000 BC. And this is the international symbol of Islam to this day. When you get deeper into it, these are all different masks, again, on the same face of the moon and sun religions. This is Mormonism. In America, again, the sun and moon symbolism is all over their symbols in Salt Lake City, etc. So when you see Mother Mary and Jesus, what you're looking at is a depiction of Queen Semiramis, the goddess of Babylon, and Nimrod stroke Tammuz, because they said that Nimrod, when he died, became the sun god Baal and impregnated Semiramis with the rays of the sun. That's where the virgin birth comes from. And she gave birth to the reincarnation of Nimrod, which became known as Tammuz. And that's why in Christianity they talk about father and son being one, because that comes from the Babylonian symbolism of that. That's where Isis, the virgin mother of Egypt, and Horus, the sun in Egypt, comes from. It's the same recurring themes, and all across the world, the mother, the virgin mother, and the baby religions follow, and they all come from the same source. And because they project it in a different way, people think that they're different religions, but they're the same basic religion. Consciousness, I mean, this is the point I would stress. Consciousness doesn't do religion. Mind does religion. And this is an ancient depiction of Queen Semiramis, the goddess of Babylon, and I think I've seen her somewhere else before. The Statue of Liberty, a mirror depiction of Queen Semiramis, was given to New York by French Freemasons in Paris, who knew exactly what it represented, the goddess of Babylon. And there you go, and there's the mirror image of the Statue of Liberty on an island in the River Seine in Paris to this day. The goddess of the French Republic, same thing. The goddess Freedom on the top of the Capitol building, same thing. The goddess Columbia, the goddess of the District of Columbia, same thing. In the Vatican, because of course the Roman Church is the Church of Babylon relocated, and they use different names for the same stories, they depicted Semiramis in Babylon as a dove, and of course Nimrod was the sun, and this is, you see in the Vatican, the dove and the sun, that's Semiramis and Nimrod, same thing. So Nimrod was the sun god, and you see him all over the place as well. The symbol of Nimrod in Babylon was the flame or the lighted torch. And that's why the Statue of Liberty is holding a lighted torch, the torch of Nimrod, and he's actually standing, when you see from above, on a depiction of the sun. And that, you see, the way they manipulate reality and sense of reality, Americans, understandably, look to the Statue of Liberty as a symbol of their freedom when it's a symbol of their enslavement. Same thing, holding Nimrod. And this is an exact and massive depiction of the flame held by the Statue of Liberty, and that's on top of the Pont d'Alma tunnel, and that's now where people take their tributes to Princess Diana, who died underneath it. Another way that Nimrod was depicted was as Dagon, the fish god. This is an original depiction from thousands of years ago, and that's just a kind of, obviously, a knocked-up symbol of it. And that's why we have this. Dagon, the fish god, the mitre. It's all the same symbolism of symbolizing Nimrod. The obelisks you find all over the place. The biggest obelisk in the world is the Washington Memorial opposite the White House, That's the penis of Nimrod Osiris, going back to that symbolism of the credo necklace too. Nimrod aircraft, all the same things. And the religions were taken across the world and expanded, and they became the religious network that we have today, which ironically fight each other when actually they're all different masks on the same face, which ultimately connect into the same network. And same with the New Age. So much of the New Age is just the same manipulation. I call the New Age the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. People who've rejected mainstream religion and rejected this world is all there is science and are looking into things of vibration and stuff like that and spirituality in another way, you've got to stop them, get into the gold mine. So you want a cul-de-sac to get them into, and it's become known as the New Age. And they also worship, and again, anything to do with this network is always, reptilian brain, hierarchical. And so we have hierarchical structures of power within the New Age structure of beings and entities and great white brotherhoods. It's all hierarchy. Consciousness doesn't do hierarchy. Mind does hierarchy. If you're into hierarchy, you're in mind, you're not in consciousness. Simple things. You can see whether it's conscious or not. And I love that the New Age Jesus, Sananda, looks exactly like the Jesus depicted by the Renaissance painters who hadn't got a clue what he bloody looked like anyway. So the idea is to use religion to keep people in mind and stop them connecting to consciousness. Because when you start talking about consciousness and the way consciousness sees the world, religions go, you can't say that, that's the devil. And all the rest of it, and fright people into acquiescing to rules and regulations of these religions. And again, in the end, all these religions, you go through them and you're providing sustenance, energetic sustenance for the same entities. The same entities. It's a very true saying. Energy goes where attention goes, and worship is a really focused form of attention. And so when we're in worship, focusing on a deity, we might think the deity represents something, but it represents something else. Attention goes where, or energy flows where attention goes. 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 I mean, what an image for a religion to focus on. Someone being tortured. What are we doing? Think about it. What an image to focus a religion on. And like I say, religion is mind. That's why it's so schism-like, fractured. And they create them so they can play them off against each other. Trust Jesus. We know the truth. No, Judaism knows the truth. No, Islam knows the truth. No, this knows the truth. Play them off against each other. It's a divide and rule to put people in so many ways in that state. Religion has played a massive, massive part in this, cutting off the channels to consciousness. Oh, God, I wish I had lots of time. Okay. Coordinate. Secret society network and the religions worship the same gods because the same force controls the secret society network that controls the religions ultimately. So you have the eye of Ra, which you see over and over again in the symbolism of the secret societies and the corporations they control. Again, that's the Vatican. There you see the Freemasonry thing. And that's in a Freemasons lodge in Boston. Same thing, it's the rising sun. This is the supreme headquarters of the 33rd degree in Washington, D.C., just down from the White House. And again, the rising sun symbol of the Illuminati and the secret society network. And that's why above the Downing Street door, you have that symbol, which is the symbol of the rising sun. We control Downing Street. That's the sun chair of George Washington, the first president of the United States, a high Freemason, and again, the same symbolism. And that's what you get on NBC News. That's the symbolism of that. That's the sun on a Boston Freemasonry lodge. Worship of the sun. This is the Mother Lodge of Freemasonry in London, from which Freemasonry went out across the colonies, Australia and America and all the rest of it, and they located it in Great Queen Street, which was one of the names in Babylon for Queen Semiramis, the moon goddess, Great Queen. And so when they created Virginia, and they said it was named after the Virgin Queen, Queen Elizabeth I, who was no more a virgin than Madonna, by the way. It's just a cover story. Virginia was named after the Virgin Queen of Babylon, Semiramis. And this is how they do it, by having these pyramids within pyramids, which mirror the secret society structure of levels of degree. And in the end, these secret societies that we know, like Freemasons and all these others, they feed a very chosen select few into another pyramid that is never talked about and is denied to exist, which is where the real action is, what I call the Illuminati pyramid, and that's where the real action and power is. You can also symbolize it as, in the end, they connect into these other dimensions of reptilian entities. Each of these strands represents an organization. The closer the strand is, the organization is to the spider, the more exclusive it is, and often if you get close enough to the spider, it doesn't even have a name, because it's very difficult to lock into something that doesn't have a name. As you come out, you're starting to hit things like Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, which interact directly with mainstream society. But all of these organizations, they get their orders and agenda from the spider, and so they work as one unit. And they've done that to the world as a result. The Jesuits are a major spider, close to the spider organization. That's the Black Pope, as they call him, the head of the Jesuits currently, Adolfo Nicolas, who more power than the real Pope. And so many politicians like these people, from Pierre Trudeau in Canada and Robert Mugabe and Clinton and these other people, John Kerry, are connected into the Jesuits. So's this guy, Joe Biden, the vice president currently. Another major secret societies are the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem here, which is now known today as the Knights of Malta, and have their headquarters in Rome. These are the Knights Templar, and they control the City of London financial district and create mayhem as a result. And this is the temple area where they control law from, and this is the original Templar church that was made famous recently by the Da Vinci Code. And also, the Illuminati connect into Satanism. That's why so many of these famous people in the world take part in satanic ritual and human sacrifice and all this stuff, because these bloodlines have right the way through history, and they keep going and doing it. At one time they did it openly when they could, but now it's done extremely covertly and through this secret society network that it connects into, but it has its own structure also. And what they're doing is creating, this guy Vlad Dracul, by the way, who was famous for spearing people and impaling people and drinking their blood back, I think it was the 15th century, in what is now Romania. And he was the inspiration of the Dracula stories. And he was and his family were key members of an organization called the Royal Court of the Dragon, or the Order of the Dragon, which actually goes back to ancient Egypt, at least to ancient Egypt. And this guy's sister comes through directly to the Mary of Teck, who is the present Queen of England's grandmother. She is a direct descendant of Vlad Dracul's sister, and I'm not surprised. Things like this is kind of from a B-movie, and all this stuff that you see, this actually goes on. One of the things that has, and you see it all around the world in history, and often connected to dragons, but not always, the thing that I found one of the hardest things to cope with originally when I came across it is not just that children are sacrificed in these rituals by these famous people and lots of not so famous people, or that child abuse is going on. What staggered me is the scale of it. It is extraordinary. And sometimes it's depicted too close to the truth, like in this Stanley Kubrick movie, Eyes Wide Shut, where he understated it, actually. But he included in this movie, and he died actually very soon after it was seen by the powers that be, of a heart attack. And I know from someone who's writing a biography of Stanley Kubrick in America that 15 minutes of it were removed after he died. So what did that say? These rituals with the rich and famous in the stately homes and other places are not going on every now and again here and there. They're going on all over the world, including Australia. And my understanding is Victoria is one of the centres for it in Australia, and it involves some very well-known people in this area, as it does everywhere, because this is a global thing. And one of the things they're doing in these rituals, and I've talked to people who've taken part in them, often against their will, what they're doing is they're creating an energy bridge between the entities, the reptilian entities and other entities that operate just outside visible light. The rituals are there to create an energetic bridge which allows them to enter this dimension and be seen and to be interacted with. And one of the ways is that symbol you see in Satanism, which is the pentagram with a circle round it, and other symbols, because we see them as symbols, but they have an effect on the energy field. If you could see it on an energetic level, you would see something very different that symbol is, geometrical symbol is creating, and it's through these symbols that they bring them through energetically into this dimension and interact with them. And the hierarchy of Satanism, hierarchy of Illuminati, is based on the power of the demonic entities, as people call them, that you allow to take over your body. This is where the whole thing comes from, of selling your soul to the devil. You get the power and the prestige within this world up to a point, but you give yourself over to these demonic entities before you get that power. And then after you pass through, you become controlled by these entities when you leave the body. Now, this is in Sydney. I found this years ago. I dropped off my seat. This is a war memorial for the people who died in the 2 world wars, and this is the symbol in the middle of it. Someone being sacrificed over an image of the sun. This symbolism is all over the place. Bohemian Grove, where they worship a 40-foot stone owl, which is symbolic of Queen Semiramis. This is an original Babylonian depiction of Queen Semiramis, and she's famous for being connected to owls. And there you have an owl on the street plan around the Capitol building in Washington. And if you look at another level of it, it's standing in the street plan on a pyramid. And this is symbolic of Queen Semiramis, with the Capitol building, American politics in its belly. And like I say, this is a global thing. This is Canberra, with the Capitol building at the top, the Parliament building at the top. Because the same force is controlling this country as is controlling America and Britain and all of them. So they use the same symbolism if you look for it. And these people, famous people, top people in banking, business, politics, presidents, go to Bohemian Grove in Northern California and worship this stone owl, Semiramis. You couldn't make it up. This is a picture from Bohemian Grove in 1957. That's a guy called Glenn Seaborg who developed plutonium. Cheers, Glenn. And there, at the time, 1957, is a B-movie actor called Ronald Reagan. And here's a career politician called Richard Nixon, just about to take Kennedy on in the 1960 election. Both Bohemian Grove members, and both go on to be presidents of the United States, no matter what their background. Presidents, like in every other country, are not selected by ballot, or elected by ballot. They're selected by blood and by Illuminati and networks. In the way that Orwell described, and the way we're experiencing now, not even by the day, but by the bloody hour, of more and more surveillance, more. And this is the situation that we face in this world. People who are infinite consciousness operating at the level of body consciousness. And that's exactly where the manipulators want us. Because if we are not connecting out there and getting our insight, inspiration, intuitive knowing from out there, then where do we look to to get a fix on who we are and what's happening in the world, we look that way, through the ears and the eyes. And who's controlling that information? Those that control the media, education, etc. Gotcha. The body, I call it a genetic spacesuit. And it's kind of funny. You know, if you were on the moon with someone and an astronaut started thinking he was his spacesuit, I mean, crikey, can you imagine? Hey, Houston, we've got a problem. Bill thinks he's his spacesuit. He's bloody mad because he's not his spacesuit. Yeah, but we think we're our spacesuit. And what would there be in that situation on the moon? There would be chaos. Well, that's why there's chaos here, because we believe we're our spacesuit. That's what makes racism so insane. It's like saying, oh, I'm better than you because my spacesuit's different colour. Bloody ridiculous. But the cutting edge of human knowledge, so why should I complain? We are consciousness working through the body. Now, I got a real amazing feeling for this. About 2 years ago, just before I last spoke here, when my mother died, Barbara, and I went along to the funeral, obviously, and my brother had organized it, and he said to me, do you want to come and see your mum while in the mortuary or at the funeral parlor? And my immediate reaction was, no, I remember her as she was, because it's just a body anyway. But something said, no, go. And for some reason in my life, I've never come across, the first time I've seen a dead body was my mother. And I turn up, and I walk in this room, and there's this body in this coffin, this open coffin. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but it was dead. There was no bloody life there whatsoever. Dead, unbelievably dead, took me aback dead. And next to it was this picture, which my brother had blown up, which was going to go and be used in the funeral, which it was. And there was my mother's absolutely dead body, and there was this picture of my mother absolutely full of life, full of energy, full of sparkle. And I stood there and I could see in those two images what life is, what consciousness is, because that was alive, that was dead. We are consciousness, and we've got confused. And in identifying who we are with the body, we've seriously buggered up our sense of perception and therefore our ability to be free. The energy that or the reality that we are experiencing, that we apparently see with our eyes, is just a frequency range. That's all it is, and it is minute. What we call visible light. According to current mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of the energy known to exist in the universe. 0.005%. And visible light, which is the only frequency that our eyes can decode into this reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. We are basically visually blind in terms of what exists in the same space that we're experiencing. It's just a television, holographic television station we're experiencing. Tiny frequency range, visible light that we are experiencing. And what we are is, at this level, receiver transmitters of information. And the range of frequencies that we are accessing decides the range and perception and awareness of reality that we experience. So the more you can close down the range of frequencies that we are accessing, the more you close down the perception and the sense of infinity of the people you are targeting. The body is a biological computer. Biological in the sense that, unlike a desktop computer, it has the ability to an extent to think for itself and work things out for itself. That's what we call evolution on a physical level. The computer is constantly receiving information, vibrational information from its environment, and it is reacting to that. It does it all the time. If we go into a place where it's cold, it will react to that. Where it's hot, it will react to that. And it's the same with things like animals, that over a period of time, their environment changes. That information is being received by the computer and analyzed by the computer, and it's making changes. And if those environmental changes, habitat changes, happen slow enough, that is why you see animal bodies evolve to fit the new environment. But if it happens really quick, we call it extinction because it can't change fast enough. It's a computer working. And we are receiving vibrational information which we're decoding into this reality. Get into that more shortly. We are interacting with this infinite consciousness, but how much of that consciousness are we reacting to with? That depends on the range of frequencies we're accessing. And we're a bit like a dodgem car in a fairground. You know, you've got the dodgem car, it's going round, it's doing everything, lots of energy, and then once the power is switched off, it's, hey, my car's gone dead. Yes, because its energy source is gone, and that's what we call death. Not death at all. It's the movement of consciousness out of this reality. That's all. What we call near-death experiences have enormous amounts of common stories about what they experienced when they left the body and then were returned when their body was revived. Stories that support massively what I'm saying here today about the fact that we are consciousness and the body's just a vehicle. They talk about going through the tunnel into another reality and how limitation disappears, how the emotional intensity disappears, because a lot of that emotional intensity, if not all of it, is body consciousness. This is what one near-death experiencer said about what he experienced when he left the body. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and about everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time, there is no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation, of distance, of period, of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be